Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Can Keithie Take the Heat? This week's episode, we are going to stray from the cookbook, JR's good old cookbook, to make a recipe that was kind of a request, actually, from one Justin Rosero. And he wanted us to make Sensational Sherri's pizza spaghetti, or at least pepperoni spaghetti. So the way that this recipe kind of comes about is that Sensational Queen Sherri. And I just want to point out for the fact that Sherri is in studio with us today. Sherri's in studio with us today, along with the WCW, NWA, WCW / World Heavyweight Television Champion, sonning Steve Austin. That's a special request by Sean Kidd, and that's because we're cooking for Sherri today. But this recipe came about because this was one of those recipes that Sherri would make while on the road with the guys. As I always have said, I think Sherri was considered much more of one of the boys than one of the girls. So I felt like, whereas you would hear kind of some seedy details about some of the other women in wrestling, you didn't hear those about Sherri. Sherri was well respected amongst the guys because she could take a bump. She could do all the things that they did. And not only that, this was one of the special meals. Everybody that is asked about this always says how it made it feel like home. So for this recipe, it's real simple actually. Already in my pan, I have some pepperoni slices, and I'm going to turn this on and let this kind of heat up. It's just to really kind of toast, crisp them up a little bit. The ones that I got are actually the ones that will curl into like little cups. You could use probably any one you want. You could also cut your own salami if you want, or your own pepperoni, and that would be fine. Also, it calls for a jar of pizza sauce. So I'm going with Rao's homemade pizza sauce. And then it's 1 tablespoon of lemon pepper seasoning. It says one tablespoon of pepper. I'm assuming that's crushed red pepper flakes, which is what I'm doing. 2 tablespoons of sugar. And then 5 tablespoons of some grated Parmesan cheese. And the recipe specifically says no oregano. So Sherri must not have liked oregano. Also, once that's heated up, you kind of put it out over some pasta. I have my water boiling, so I'm going to put my pasta in right now. Because again, this shouldn't take very long. Pasta, you want to follow the instructions on the package. If it says 7 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is, you do that minus a minute or so. And the reason being is because it will continue to cook once you take it out of the water. So you want to kind of just see the package. So for this thin pasta, it says 8 to 9 minutes. So I'm going to let it go 8 minutes. And then I'll pull it, drain it, and then it continues to cook while it's sitting in the water. While it's out of the water. So, yep. And then really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let these heat up. And then once these are rip raw and ready to go, I'm going to add in my sauce. And then you add in your sauce, you let that heat up, and then you add in all the seasonings. And that's pretty much basically it. This is going to probably be a quick video this week, or this month, only because it's not a real, heavy-duty recipe. It's a very simple recipe. Like I said, Sherri would make this while she was on the road with all the wrestlers. And it was something that, for a lot of them who were just looking for like a home-cooked meal, this was it. They got this, and this was kind of, what they would have. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll cook this up and, we'll see what it comes out as. So I have the pepperoni starting to curl up a little bit here, which is nice. I do want to talk a little bit about Sherri while we're kind of cooking here. Now, as you may or may not know, Sherri started out, she actually had originally gone to Grizzly Smith. I always call him Grizzly Adams, and I know that's wrong. She actually went to Grizzly Smith when she was like a teenager, and wanted to kind of learn how to become a professional wrestler, to which he told her to come back a little bit when she's older. So Sherri did go into train with Fabulous Moolah, but got kicked out of Moolah's school. They said it was because she was kind of causing a ruckus. I'm willing to bet it was because Sherri was like, this is a bunch of horse shit with this woman. So, all right, we got a little bit here. So there's a little bit of, probably we could drain this a little bit, just because the pepperoni's giving off a little bit too much oil, I would think, for my taste. So I'm going to do a little trick here, which is I'm going to take some paper towel, and I'm just going to kind of use the paper towel to soak up the extra hot oil. in the bottom. You can do this. You got to just be careful not to burn yourself, obviously. But I'm just doing that because just a little too much oil. I mean, you can see that's a lot of oil coming out of the pepperoni. So I'm gonna go ahead, soak that up, toss that, and now I'm gonna add in my pizza sauce. And I turn my heat down, turn it down a little bit more. I'm gonna add a little bit of water. So, good thing to do is just kind of use the water to clean out the jar. So I'm just going to kind of mix this in and let this kind of heat back up. And so Sherri, after training, she decided she went into the AWA. She kind of made her big name, I would say, in the AWA. Former world champion. She then comes into the WWF back in the late 80s, and she challenges Rockin' Robin she challenges and beats Fabulous Moolah for the women's championship. And then she does end up losing it to Rockin' Robin, and they have a bit of a feud for a little while. And then, of course, once post WrestleMania 5, one of the best things I remember about Sherri was that after WrestleMania 5, kind of like on the Coliseum video exclusive, she ends up coming back and kind of, after the show's over, Hogan's, kind of celebrating, talking to Mean Gene, and she comes out, she kind of helps Savage. So she, de facto becoming like his manager after WrestleMania 5. And of course, she's with Savage through the period of him as Macho Man, where he's teaming with Zeus, and then his feud with Hogan, his feud with Beefcake. She's continues on with him as he feuds with Hacksaw Jim Duggan, King Duggan, to win the crown. And then she becomes the sensational Queen Sherri during the coronation ceremony. She then has, they feud with Dusty. She has a great feud with Sapphire, Sweet Sapphire, in 1990. And then, of course, in 1991, when Savage loses the career-ending match, The Ultimate Warrior, there's the infamous scene where she's beating up Savage after the match, and Miss Elizabeth comes in to make the save, and that reunites Savage with Elizabeth. But what about Sherri? Well, Sherri didn't have too much long to wait. She comes in later on that night at WrestleMania 7 and interferes in the Virgil Ted DiBiase match to assist Ted DiBiase with the beatdown of Roddy Piper. And then she becomes Ted DiBiase's manager. And she's with Ted pretty much through 1992. I'm going to add the pepper flakes in. I'm going to add the lemon pepper. I'm going to add the sugar. And I'm going to mix this in together before I add the Parmesan cheese. So she's with Ted DiBiase through most of 1992, or up until 1992 when he starts to form Money Incorporated with IRS, or Ernest Shyster. There is a period of time where I believe it's right really before they become formed and like win the titles, where Sherri's kind of managing them. And then they switch to Jimmy Hart. But then she shows up on the funeral parlor one week and she starts talking about her honey bunny, and she asked her lovey-dovey Ted if she could go, and it's going to manage Shawn Michaels, the Heartbreak Kid. Now I'm going to add in the Parmesan cheese, and I'm just going to stir this in. And this is kind of it, but we'll keep talking about Sherri while this is going, because I got another. My pasta's pretty much done, so this actually looks pretty good for like a quick little weeknight sauce. You can make this on a weeknight, absolutely. So, and you're getting a little bit more protein because you got the pepperoni in here, so not bad. But maybe taste it a little bit. Just want to make sure that it's good. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to do something a little different. I'm just going to pull the pasta right out of the water. Kind of drain it a little. And put it right into the bowl, right into the pan. And the reason being is because pasta water actually is starchy enough that it kind of will, it'll give a little bit more body to the sauce. You know what? I'm not going to use tongs because those are sucky. I'm going to get this thing, which is like an actual pasta spoon. much better. So Sherri manages Shawn Michaels pretty much up until Marty Jannetty comes back in early '93. Marty ends up throwing the mirror that she used to bring down to ringside to stare at Shawn into Shawn, and he throws Sherri. So kind of when she comes back, she's a de facto face, and she doesn't stick with Marty as much as she ends up starting to feud with whoever Shawn's feuding with. She's kind of partnering up. So, famously at WrestleMania 9, she kind of comes out with Tatanka, and then that kind of kicks off a feud with her and Luna Vachon, who she fights with Luna Vachon for a bit until she kind of leaves the WWE and she shows up in the WCW, where she's starts kind of like another resurgence of her career as Sister Sherri. She's working with Ric Flair and the Four Horsemen for a bit, and she kind of has a little feud with Robert Fuller. And then I believe right towards the end, and I could be wrong, and please in the comments tell me if I am, I believe she kind of starts up with Medusa, but Sherri by that point she wasn't really doing much in the way of wrestling anymore. So, and then that's kind of, I think she makes like some sporadic appearances. Like I showed up on like an ECW show. She showed up at some independent shows and things like that. But she's kind of like, she's out of wrestling until she gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. And that was a huge deal. I've always been a big Sherri fan. So I was excited when she got inducted. I felt like it was one of those like, man, this should have happened already. But so Sherri gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. And sadly, she kind of passed away. She had some issues with, I believe, drugs and alcohol. And, but one of the greatest of all time, by far one of the greatest females of all time, especially in an era that was dominated really by men, Because that's one thing you have to think about is that Sherri was in a time when it was really just the men ruled the ring. So for Sherri to be notable and definitely have a good career on her own, that's unbelievable, And one of the things I always say, and I'll probably end the pod with this, is her rendition of the Heartbreak Kids theme song. But that's kind of my love letter to Sensational Sherri. And as you can see, here is Sherri's pepperoni pizza spaghetti. So listen to everything we do here on the Backbone Wrestling Network, North South Connection Podcast Network. Check me out on GFA Live with Petey Winson. And stay tuned for some more fun recipes we're going to be doing here on Can Keithie Take the Heat. And we'll see you when we see you.
I think he's cute. He's so sexy. He's got the look that drives a girl's wife. Got the moves that really move me. He sends chills up and down my spine. He's just my sexy boy. He's not your boy toy. He's just my sexy boy. He's not your boy toy. He makes me hot. He makes me shiver. My knees get weak when he comes around. I see him walk. I hear him talk. He makes me feel like I'm on cloud nine. He's just my sexy boy.